set of notes, or is it the notes from the kids?
Nope, we're the same ones. We're just going to pick up from where we left off last time, as the Battle of Gettysburg concludes.
The North has great momentum.
The North has great momentum. Thank you very much. We have all this momentum, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All this momentum, but at the same time, this battle takes place in 1863. We still have 2 years left to go. Now, we've kind of been talking about this for several days now. The South does have a big advantage. What's the one thing they have going for them? They're generals. Lee's still alive. Lee still commands. But what's just happened to his army?
They're all dead.
It's been crushed. Now, he still has some numbers. Like I was saying, probably about 2/3 of his army is going to die at Gettysburg. But he still has followers. They still believe in Lee. What Lincoln starts thinking is that, yes, Meade had a big victory at Gettysburg. But I don't think he has what it takes to end the war. We need to find someone who has what it takes to end the war. Now, in order to do this, I have to shift theaters. We've been talking about what's going on in the Eastern Theater for the past several days. Bull Run, Antietam, Gettysburg, all takes place in here. But there's a whole other side of the war. The Western Theater is going to be key for a handful of reasons. Now, I should say this. There's one big, overarching idea about what's going on in the West. So I got to point this out. What's right through here? Mississippi River. It is the absolute key to the war in the West. Now, we had talked about this when we first started. Do you remember? What is it about the Mississippi that makes it so important? There are a few things, really. But what's one thing that makes it so valuable? Jeff, what do you think?
So like it connects most of these slave states with the
That's part of it, certainly. It comes out down here. New Orleans is going to be key. You're absolutely right. So let's kind of do this. If you control the mouth of the Mississippi, you control a great deal. What do you control? Yes, ma'am.
the goods.
Excellent. You control what goes in and what goes out. So controlling the Mississippi is key. Now, there are some other reasons. Why else is it so nice to control the Mississippi? Let me see if I can give you a hint here. What do you see? Ben, what do you see?
It splits the Confederacy in half.
It divides the Confederacy. You control the Mississippi. You basically isolate Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. Keep them out. This is going to be the main focus of the Western Theater, controlling the Mississippi. Now, we're going to see 2 key battles that are going to be the turning point in the West. There's going to be Shiloh, which is just on the border of Tennessee, and also Vicksburg, which is basically kind of right here, right where in northeastern Louisiana, but it's in Mississippi. Now, I have to kind of point this out. What do you see about where these 2 battles take place? What do you see? Yes, Ben?
They're both on the Mississippi River.
They're right on the Mississippi River. You win in these 2 strategic places, you control the Mississippi. Now, Shiloh and Vicksburg are going to take place in 1862 and 1863. These 2 key victories are what cements control of the Mississippi for the Union. Now, I should probably just point this out real fast. In 62 and 63, how are things going for the Union in the Eastern Theater? Poorly, to say the least. Do we really have any successes in the Eastern Theater? Not at that point. In the West, we're really winning. We're having some success. And Lincoln notices. He's really taking stock in what's happening in the Western Theater and saying, well, why do we have all this success in the West and not in the East? He very quickly starts to notice the commander in charge of the Western Theater, General Ulysses S. Grant. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about Grant, because he's a man who kind of is put in the forefront almost by accident. For years, Grant was very average. He went to West Point. He graduated about the middle of his class. He serves in the military. He does well. He has great leadership skills. But he never liked military life because there was something that he just loved. He loved his wife so much that he didn't want to be away from her. And military life took him away from her. So he served in the military for a number of years and said, I'm sick of this. I want to be done. I want to go home. So he leaves the military and he goes home to his wife. And he becomes a dentist. He's a terrible dentist. So he becomes an insurance salesman. He's a terrible salesman. Then he made his own invention. He made a tonic that probably killed a handful of people. He's just average. Then the Civil War begins. And he's tapped by Lincoln, saying that I know you're a good leader. I need you to come back to the military. Kind of begrudgingly, Grant says, okay, I will do it. I'll leave my wife and I'll go back to the military. But he misses her. So he starts drinking round the clock. All the time, he's just drinking whiskey from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to bed. Now, I will tell you, that's probably not good for a general to be doing that. So he says, I should cut back on drinking and just take up tobacco. He would chew tobacco all day long until he found some problems with his gums. Now, I should probably ask, guess what the problem was? It was the tobacco. He probably had cancer on his gums. So they just kind of cut everything out. He said, I obviously can't chew tobacco. I have to smoke it then. He would smoke 20 cigars a day.
Oh my.
Literally. He made key decisions based on if he could get his cigar shipments in. He's just kind of a strange guy. But he is a good leader. He's something. This is someone who's kind of just pushed into prominence. With his success in the West, Lincoln notices. Lincoln starts saying, I have all these ineffective generals in the East. Remember what he did with all those ineffective generals? He fires them. He had McClellan, fires him. He had Burnside, fires him. He had Hooker, fires him. He has Meade. Meade has some success. But here's Lincoln saying, I don't know if Meade has what it takes to end the war. He succeeded at Gettysburg, but we need more. Meade was always playing not to lose. He doesn't play to win. Grant, on the other hand, wants the war over, and he wants it over now, because he wants to get home. Lincoln's going to call Grant to the White House, sit him down and say, General, you tell me, what's it going to take to end the war? And Grant responds back in kind of a weird way, because you have to remember, he's talking to the president. And he tells Lincoln, oh, I know how to win the war. I don't think you have the courage or the stomach for it, though. He tells the president, who's consumed by the war, I don't think you have what it takes to do it. Now, it's not really recorded what Lincoln does. I can think he goes one of two ways. He's either angry or intrigued. He asks Grant, you explain then. What do you want to do that you think I don't have the courage or the stomach for? And Grant just tells it very bluntly, you need to annihilate the South. You need to destroy them. You need to be certain that they are completely decimated. Now, this is kind of a weird way of going about this because Lincoln's sort of thinking about the post-war country. If we just annihilate the South, then we have to convince them to become states again. That's a hard sell. Grant doesn't have to worry about that. Grant says just end the war. Just bring it to a close. There's an old saying that even Grant is going to reference here, where he says, the victor is not the victor if the defeated does not accept defeat. Let me say that again. The victor is not the victor if the defeated does not accept defeat. What does this old saying mean? The victor is not the victor until the defeated accepts defeat. What do you think? Matt, what do you think?
Well, it means that, like, the defeated, they don't accept defeat, so they can keep fighting.
Excellent. They're going to keep fighting until they can't fight anymore. You don't win the war until the defeated accepts defeat. What Grant says is, you've been fighting this war all wrong. You've been fighting it too easy on the South. You need to annihilate them. You need to switch to something that has existed for thousands and thousands of years. You need to use a total war approach where everything in your society is converted to fighting the war efforts. Your railroads are used for the war effort. Your factories that were producing civilian goods, change them. They're now making bullets. They're now making cannons. Switch everything to destroy your enemy. Now, this is something that Lincoln is probably taken a bit aback by. He probably starts thinking in his mind about how this could take place. And what Grant's going to explain is, it's pretty simple. You need to destroy everything they can use to continue the war. Anything that gives them comfort, destroy it. Railroads, destroy them. Southern cropland, burn them. Homes, level them. Churches, burn them. Anything the South can use to continue fighting, eliminate it. You need to end their economic, psychological, physical ability to continue fighting. Now, if someone proposed this to you, annihilate your enemy, would you maybe have a little problem with it? Would you maybe think, I have some moral issues with this? Grant doesn't care. Even Grant says, you know what the best war is? A short one. Inflict maximum casualties as fast as possible and bring the war to an end. But Grant has a little bit of a problem. And I say this in the best way possible. His problem is, he's a really nice guy. And he has a drinking problem. And a smoking problem. And a chewing problem. But other than that, he's a really nice guy. I don't necessarily know if Grant has the stomach to do this. I don't know if he wants to. So he needs to find someone who will. Someone who's been passed over for promotions time and time again. Someone with a bit of a chip on his shoulder, to say the least. Someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to get noticed. There's been a general who's been in this war for some time that is really frustrated with the American military. He believes he's been slighted again and again. Lincoln's going to approach him and say, I have a job for you, but I need you to do it perfectly. He's going to approach General Sherman. Now, I will say this. Grant was a nice guy. Sherman was not. Sherman understood his orders very clearly, but he wants to be certain that he has it right. When Grant tells him, I need you to annihilate the South, destroy them, burn it to the ground, everyone can be considered combatants, Sherman has to kind of double check with him and say, are you certain? Because if I do what you're asking me to do, and I level the South, and then come home, and I'm told that